I'm here today with Larry Cooley, and we thought that we would get together and have a conversation here at the Brookings Institution about some of the dimensions of scaling education innovations for impact, specifically in low and middle income countries, but we're not going to limit ourselves to that. There's an awful lot to say about this topic, and we thought we would just chat with you all.
I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
There are a couple of sort of common trade-offs that we hear about, and I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how scaling teams might navigate them. One of them is speed versus depth, that their funders and the politicians who are looking for quick results might be incentivizing moving very quickly, but the scaling teams themselves might know that to do it right for sustainable impact requires depth, which takes time.
Yes.
Do you have thoughts on that?
I do. I think the donors have really done, in many cases, a disservice on this issue because they're pushing for high numbers of direct beneficiaries in short periods of time, too short periods of time. So they skip a lot of that testing that I'm talking about early on. They really make it hard to pivot, even the little pivots on things, because they're seen as non-compliance with something that you said you were originally going to do. And so I think if we all can keep our eye on what does it really take to shift the system and where are we in that process and what does it take to sustain it over time and how do you get small victories and consolidate them along the way so that they're not always vulnerable to reversal on things we do ourselves a big favor. Another way to think about the trade-off issue, which is that when we try to make interventions good, we usually end up adding features to them. So let's say it's early childhood development, and somebody would say, gee, the kids are coming to school malnourished. If we could add some feeding to this thing, this would be a much better program, right? And somebody says, well, the caregivers are really undertrained. If we could do more to beef up the skills of, right? Then somebody says, well, the parents really need to do a fair amount of this stuff at home if it's going to stick. If we had a parenting program that was adjacent, all of these things are, in my opinion, correct. But every time you add one of those, this early childhood development program just got more complicated and more expensive. So if you're the program designer and you're looking for the best possible outcome, you add those things. Why? Because it improves it does. It improves the outcome. If you're the scaler, in my opinion, you're trying to see what you can take away. It's what I call subtraction rather than addition on this. And to say, okay, if I could take away 50% of the cost and 50% of the complexity, and it cost me 20% of the impact, would I take that deal? I say I'd take it in a flash. I'd take it in a flash. And somebody would say, well, wait, you left 20% of the impact on the table. I'd say, I know. I mean, it's not a happy trade-off, but it's a legitimate trade-off. But again, I don't think there's an algorithm for that. I think that's a judgment call. But if you talk to the scaling people will say the trade-off is often between complexity and cost on the one hand and feasibility of scaling on the other.
I want to ask you about one more trade-off that we hear a lot about, and this has to do with contextualizing an innovation in a new location on the one hand versus the extra time and money it required to do that. I feel like a lot of folks are stuck between a desire to spend the time piloting, learning, contextualizing the innovation against the fact that their incentive system is saying, do this quickly.
I think that's one of the hardest ones. One of the things I say a lot is context is king. And it's absolutely the case. Some things that would work in one situation won't work in another. I could give you a laundry list of personal difficult experiences I've had trying to transfer something to somewhere else. It also means that there's a premium, of course, on things that transfer more easily. The truth is, if you're insensitive to the context, you'll fail. And so if there's not some way of dealing with that, either by choosing interventions that aren't quite as dependent on context, or by putting in the time, you'll be fast and wrong.
Larry, thank you so much. I've really appreciated this conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me into it.
Thanks.